Power in Carthage did not sit on a throne. It stood in pairs, elected, watched, constrained, and constantly tested by rivals. At the very top of the Punic political system were the Sephetes, figures whose authority looked modest on paper but whose judicial weight shaped the entire Carthaginian empire. Neither kings nor mere magistrates, the Sephetes embodied a uniquely Phoenician answer to a universal political problem: how to rule without letting one man rule too much. Origins, from kingship to magistracy. Carthage began, like many ancient cities, under kings. Early traditions mention monarchs such as Malchus, whose military power grew so threatening that the city's elites eventually expelled him. That episode left a permanent scar on Carthaginian political memory. Kingship came to be associated with tyranny, ambition, and instability. By the late 6th century BCE, Carthage had abolished monarchy and replaced it with a republican system centered on two annually elected Sephetes, from the Punic Shof team, judges. The choice of title is revealing. Where Greeks spoke of archons and Romans of consuls, Carthage spoke the language of judgment, not command. This was not accidental. Phoenician political culture, shaped by mercantile cities like Tyre and Sidon, favored arbitration, contracts, and negotiated authority over heroic leadership. In Carthage, law preceded glory. Election and social background. The Sephetes were elected annually, almost certainly by a popular assembly, though the details remain murky. What is clear is that they came from the elite, wealthy families involved in trade, land ownership, and overseas enterprises. Carthage was no democracy in the Athenian sense, but neither was it an oligarchy without accountability. What makes the Sephetes fascinating is that they were not immune to prosecution. After their term ended, they could be brought before courts for misconduct, corruption, or abuse of authority. This alone places Carthage closer to Rome than to most Near Eastern monarchies. Aristotle, who examined Carthage as a functioning constitutional model, praised this feature. In his Politics, he notes that Carthage avoided many revolutions precisely because its magistrates were restrained by law and custom. Judicial authority, the core of Suffete power. The Sephetes' primary function was judicial. They presided over courts, interpreted customary law, and supervised legal procedures. In a society driven by contracts, commercial, maritime, and colonial, this role was central. Their judicial authority likely included civil disputes, especially over property, debts, and trade contracts. Commercial litigation, including overseas ventures and partnerships. Public prosecutions, particularly cases involving abuse of office. Religious legal matters, since law and cult were closely intertwined. Unlike Roman consuls, Sephetes did not command armies by default. Military leadership was usually entrusted to generals, rabbim, who could be, and often were, separate from the highest civil magistracy. This separation was deliberate. Carthage feared the fusion of judicial legitimacy with armed force. In my view, this was Carthage's greatest strength and, paradoxically, one of its weaknesses. It produced stability at home but sometimes hesitation abroad. Sephetes and the Senate shared power. The Sephetes did not rule alone. They worked alongside a powerful Senate, the Audierim, composed of elders from leading families. Most major decisions, war, peace, treaties, large expenditures, required senatorial approval. In practice, the Sephetes functioned as agenda setters and legal moderators. They convened councils, framed issues for debate, and ensured that decisions followed established norms. When disagreement arose between Sephetes and Senate, matters could be referred to a popular assembly, an unusual feature for a Phoenician-derived state. This triangular balance, Sephetes, Senate, Assembly, created a system remarkably resistant to coups. Unlike Syracuse, Athens, or even Rome, Carthage experienced very few internal revolutions over centuries. The Council of the 104, oversight and fear. Above even the Sephetes loomed the infamous Council of the 104, a permanent judicial body responsible for overseeing generals and magistrates. This council could impose heavy fines, exile, or even death. Generals returning from defeat often faced prosecution. Unlike Rome, where failure could be redeemed by political maneuvering, Carthaginian commanders lived under constant legal threat. The Sophetes, as senior judicial figures, interacted closely with this council, enforcing its decisions and legitimizing its authority. Greek and Roman writers portrayed this system as harsh and demoralizing. Yet from a Carthaginian perspective, it made sense. No individual success justified risking tyranny. Religious dimension of Sophete authority. Carthaginian law was inseparable from religion. The Sophetes presided over oaths sworn before Baal Hammon and Tanit. Legal decisions carried divine weight, and perjury was not just a crime but a sacrilege. This sacral aspect strengthened judicial authority. A ruling was not merely correct, it was cosmically binding. This helps explain why Carthaginian society could function with relatively few written laws compared to Rome. Custom, precedent, and divine sanction filled the gaps. Comparison with Roman consuls. Ancient writers often compared Sophetes to Roman consuls, and the comparison is useful, but only up to a point. Similarities. Two magistrates serving jointly. Annual terms. Accountability after office. Elite social background. Differences. Sophetes emphasized judicial power, consuls military command. Roman consuls led armies, Sophetes usually did not. Roman political culture rewarded ambition, Carthaginian culture punished it. Rome's system encouraged expansion through personal glory. Carthage expanded through institutions and contracts. One conquered the Mediterranean by war, the other managed it by law, until war became unavoidable. Sophetes in the imperial context. As Carthage expanded across North Africa, Iberia, and the western Mediterranean, Sophetes faced a challenge: how to apply city-based judicial authority to an empire. Local communities often retained their own laws, but major disputes, tax issues, and treaty violations fell under Carthaginian oversight. Sophetes, directly or indirectly, supervised these legal frameworks, ensuring loyalty without constant military occupation. This legal imperialism worked, until it met Rome. Rome did not fight Carthage with better generals at first. It fought it with a different legal imagination, one that fused command, citizenship, and conquest more aggressively. Decline and disappearance. After Carthage's defeat in the Second Punic War, Roman pressure drastically reduced the city's autonomy. The Sophetes continued to exist, but their authority was hollowed out. By the time of the Third Punic War, Carthaginian law was effectively subordinated to Roman demands. When Carthage fell in 146 BCE, the Sophetes vanished, not because the institution failed internally, but because a judicial republic cannot survive total military annihilation. The Sophetes represent an alternative path in political history. They show that ancient states did not inevitably move toward monarchy or military dictatorship. Carthage built a system where law outranked charisma, where judgment restrained ambition, and where power was safest when divided. Personally, I find the Sophetes more modern than many Roman institutions. In an age obsessed with strong leaders, Carthage trusted procedures instead. That choice brought centuries of stability, and ultimately left it vulnerable to a rival who believed that power should march at the head of legions. History did not reward the judges. But it should remember them.